for the 11.2 Unit 1 test. Just an update, I will mention this in class, but just so everyone knows, I think for this first test, everyone is going to read from a punctuated Gemara. It will look like this. It won't have, just like this, won't have commas or periods or question marks, but to kind of alleviate the stress of having to pronounce words correctly and having that kind of clogging up our brain. So we're going to read from a blank punctuated Gemara. Merkava is a great resource to use. That's where I'm on right now. You can't really see it in the video. But themerkava.com, happy to show everyone, it's a great resource. It'll kind of has, you can expand the translation, you can use the Nikudot, and it kind of goes phrase by phrase for you as you go. So we're going to start with a chunk of the Mishnah. Echad dinei mamanot, echad dinei nefashot, b'drisha u'v'chakira. Both monetary cases and capital cases, meaning where there's require probing questions, we ask questions to the witnesses. Shina Amar, as the pasuk says, mishpat echad yihi alachem. There shall be one law for you, one justice system. Now the Mishnah asks, Ma bein dinei mamanot, dinei nefashot. Ma bein, what is the difference? What's between them? Monetary and capital cases. First difference, dinei mamanot b'shlosha. 3 judges versus 23 judges. Dinei mamanot, in monetary cases, potchin bein l'schut bein l'chova. Either side can go first, can be poteach, either arguing innocent or arguing guilty. Dinei nefashot potchin l'schut bein potchin l'chova. In the capital cases, only the side arguing innocent gets to go first. You never open with the arguments that someone is guilty. Dinei mamanot, matin al pi echad bein l'schut bein l'chova. In monetary cases, you can decide, you can lean based on a majority of one for either innocent or guilty, like 3 to 2, 5 to 6, 5 to 4. And in capital cases, a majority of one is good enough to declare someone innocent, but if you want to find someone guilty, it's kind of like win by 2 in basketball. You got to have 10 to 9. 10 to 9 isn't good enough, you need 10 to 8. In monetary cases, you can reopen a case, you can reverse a decision, whether to now change someone to innocent or to change someone to guilty. In capital cases, you can reopen the case to find someone innocent, but you cannot reopen the case to find someone guilty. And we're going to skip down to the Gemara now later on in the wide lines. In monetary cases, do we really require, ba'inan means to require, do we really require probing questions? As the Mishnah said, we have a contradictory source. We have a contract whose date is dated. The date on the contract is Aleph Nisan in the Shemitah year. And new witnesses come and say, hey, say, Reuven and Shimon, who signed this original contract, how could they have testified to this contract? How could they have signed this contract? On that day, Aleph Nisan, they were with us in a different place. This contract says Aleph Nisan Riverdale, but in Aleph Nisan, now Levi and Yehuda come and say, Reuven and Shimon were with us in Teaneck. How could this contract say Aleph Nisan Riverdale? So we have this contract whose validity is called in question. The Breita concludes that the contract and the witnesses are still valid because we are concerned, we suspect that the witnesses delayed in writing the contract. The Levi and Yehuda are right, but these witnesses just wrote the contract later, and the date on the contract was the day that they wrote it, not the date that the loan happens. But now the Gemara looks at this right and says, wait a minute, if you require probing questions, like our Mishnah said you ask probing questions to the witnesses, how is the Breita concluding that the judges assume something, that they suspect something was written later? If they're not sure, if they have a suspicion about something, they should ask. So the fact that the judges are not asking, the fact that this Breita ends with the judges concluding, the fact that this Breita ends with the judges having to suspect something or having to assume something means obviously they're not asking questions. So this Breita is suggesting that judges don't ask questions. So contradiction between Mishnah and Breita. Rabbi Chanina gives a solution. Rabbi Chanina, davar Torah, echad dinei mamanot ve'echad dinei nefashot b'drisha v'chakira. No, the words of the Torah, the Doraita rule is you ask questions in both. Shena Amar mishpat echad yihi alachem. That the Torah said, one system of justice. So the Breita is not telling us the Torah rule. The Breita is telling us the Rabbanan rule. That now the rabbis got rid of questions, but Matam Amru, why did they say that? That you don't require probing questions. So you don't lock the door in the face of the borrowers, which you need to understand, remember how that exactly that is, that questions kind of discourage loans because witnesses will get disqualified. But if that's true, if it's true that the judges nowadays are not allowed to ask questions, ta'u lo yishalmu, where the judges make a mistake, they shouldn't have to pay. It's not fair to the judges. They have to, you say you tie one hand behind their back and say no questions, then you blame them for getting it, and then you penalize them for getting it wrong. So we conclude kol shekain shetin ol delad bifnei lovin. Now, even you're right that this does make it hard, but if the judges don't have to pay, then that's also going to discourage lenders because lenders know that there's always the chance of them, the judge will have to pay them back if everything really goes haywire. And if you get rid of that, then we like the value of people giving loans is so significant that we that even we'll kind of have to mess over the judges and put them in an unfair situation because otherwise no one would give loans. Okay, we're going to skip now to Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, and we discussed the section of Dinei Lamadot Machzirin. That when exactly do our Mishnah had said that we reopen it, you can reopen a monetary case. You can always reopen it if you get it wrong. Excuse me. Uraminhu, we have a contradiction. Dana Tadin, the judge tries a case, Tikhat Chayav, either finds innocent the guilty one or finds guilty the innocent one. Timei Tazahor rules something pure when it's really impure, or vice versa. Tier Totami rules something impure when it's really pure. Basically, the judge gets the verdict wrong. Masha Asasui, what's done is done. Veishalim Beito, and the judge has to pay from their own property. Basically, the judge pays for the mistake. But this phrase says Masha Asasui, what's done is done. Sounds like you can't reopen a verdict. And our Mishnah says yes. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef offers one solution. Lo kasha, not a contradiction. There's no problem here. Kan b'mumcha, kan b'she'eno mumcha. This one, meaning our Mishnah, is talking about an expert. An expert is allowed to reverse their decision. Rashi mentioned, which you don't have to know inside, but you should be able to explain why. That Rashi had said that an expert kind of has the authority. They're believed, they're trusted. So if they want to flip flop, there must be a good reason. But this Mishnah over here in Masachat Bechorot is talking about a non-expert judge. The non-expert judge, like you got to stick to your guns. You don't really have so much trust from the public to be able to be so wishy-washy. Rav Sheshet gives a different suggestion. We skip a few lines. Rav Sheshet Amar, Kan Shita Abidvar Mishnah. No. So our Mishnah, when you reopen a case, is talking about a case where we're talking about a mistake here. What was it? When there's a mistake in the words of the Mishnah, when you literally make a mistake about like you get the Mishnah, you get the rule wrong. You have an explicit Mishnah and you just rule against it. Kan Mishikul Hadat. But in the case where you don't reopen it, is where you make a mistake in weighing knowledge, weighing an opinion. And we'll see exactly what those means. But first, we have proof to Amar Rav Sheshet, Amar Rav Asi. Rav Sheshet says in the name of Rav Asi, Ta'ab Bidvar Mishnah. If a judge there's a mistake in the words of the Mishnah, Choser, you reopen the case. It's basically it's a worthless verdict. Ta'ab Shikul Hadat, Eino Choser. But if you make a mistake in the words of you should mistake in weighing an opinion, weighing knowledge, Eino Choser, you don't reopen the case. And now we try to figure out what exactly do these two categories mean. Amar le Ravina Rav Ashi, Afilu Ta'ab Rabbi Chia Rabbi Yoshia. What if you make a mistake? Is it considered like a Dvar Mishnah mistake? Is it considered an explicit mistake if you mess up the words of Rabbi Chia Rabbi Yoshia, which means the Tosefta, secondary kind of Mishnah era source? Amar le'in. Rav Ashi says yes, that's considered a full explicit mistake. Afilu b'di Rabbi Shmuel. What about the early Amoraim? Again, Ravina and Rav Ashi are late Amoraim, the people who are talking here. Ravina and Rav Ashi. So what about Rav and Shmuel? What if a judge rules against an explicit teaching of an early Amora? Amar La'in says, yep, that's also an explicit mistake. Afilu b'didi v'didach. What about a halacha teaching stated by me and you, like our current contemporary Amoraim? Amar Le, Rav says, Atu anan katlei kanei ba'agma anan. Are we reed cutters in the marsh or in the lake? You think we're chopped liver? You think we're worthless? That we are the sages of today, and our teachings have validity. And if a judge contradicts an explicit teaching, their verdict is worthless. So we've established that any explicit source, Mishnah, Tosefta, early Amoraim, late Amoraim, all count as like an explicit ruling. Now, okay, what is the second category? Shikul Hadat, Hechi Dami Shikul Hadat. What does that mean? Amar Papa says, Kigon Tre Tanae Tre Amora De Pli Hadad. The scenario is there's a specific halakha where there's a machloket. It's a full-fledged machloket. Rabbi Akiva says X, Rabbi Tarfon says Y. But in that context, lo itmar hilchata lo kamar velo kamar, and the rule is not like an explicit ruling. Oh, the Gemara doesn't follow Rabbi Akiva, so there's a real machloket, and it doesn't. We don't know exactly. There's not like an explicit statement of who we follow. The ikrei va'avad kechad minayu. So the judge rules. Let's follow Rabbi Akiva. The sugya deshmaitin as like idach, but really the consensus of the learning goes the other way. So this judge, common knowledge is that everyone knows we follow Rabbi Tarfon. It never says it explicitly, but everyone knows that. So if the judge rules against that, it's a mistake. They should know what the common knowledge is and what the common practice is, but it's not like their verdict is worthless. It's just a mistaken verdict. Hainu shikul adat. That's what we mean when we say weighing an opinion. Good luck on your studying, guys.